So, unlike Sophie's story, whenever I listen to the Moth podcast and I think, God, I would love to tell a story at a slam, I always think of this one, except I always struggle with what the moral is. So maybe we'll figure it out by the time I'm finished and the duck squeaks or whatever that thing is. This story actually takes place back in, I think it was 2011. I had just started work in another nonprofit setting. I was supporting my public radio habit by working part-time as a pastor's assistant at my Lutheran church in Hoboken, New Jersey. For those who don't know Hoboken, it's the city that's right across the river from Manhattan. You can see where the Twin Towers used to be right across the river there. And so a pastor's assistant, what the hell is that? So this job entailed a lot of different things, from teaching Sunday school and confirmation and greeting people on Sunday morning to helping to organize volunteers and run a very popular homeless feeding program that we called Lunchtime Ministries. And so on a daily basis, Monday through Friday, we would have anywhere from 100 to 200 people from the streets of Hoboken who would come in and have lunch in the morning. And I still don't understand it myself. But yet, there they were, all 200 of them, lining up for coffee at 8 a.m., and by noon they had soup, salad, sometimes pasta, and the kind of overarching principle of Lunchtime Ministries, and I think the reason why it was such a popular place for anybody to seek help was all are welcome, was our overarching philosophy there. And we really live that. And one day I was helping the church sexton clean up afterwards when a man came to the open door, and I noticed that he didn't look like our other guests that used to come to the soup kitchen. He was dressed head to toe in a very sharp suit, and it was very, very clean, and he had a suitcase that didn't look like it had been dragged around for a really long time. It was actually still very well put together. And so we kind of looked at each other like, what's this guy all about? So he said to us that he needed some help. He had just moved to the United States from Germany, and had some other suitcases in addition to this one, and some boxes that had been delivered to a post office in New York City, and he needed some money to get a bus from Hoboken to get there, pick up the suitcases and the boxes, and come back, where he was going to try to start looking for some housing and some help. Having only just been on this job for, I think, maybe a month, I had no idea what to do. So I ran into the church office and asked the pastor, what should I do? And so she threw me a 20 and she said, here you go, this is enough bus fare for you and this guy to go together to New York City to get the stuff. And I was kind of dumbfounded. I thought to myself, wait, why is she sending me that? Why can't we just give him the money? And I was kind of nervous about this assignment, that I was going to have to go with this guy into Manhattan, get this stuff, and come back. But I thought, I'm also a young, budding journalist. I'll get a chance to really talk to this guy, meet somebody new. Who knows? Maybe he has a really interesting life story. Little did I know. So we're sitting, we find ourselves on the 126 bus going into Manhattan, and I'm talking to this guy, and he starts telling me about his life story in his thick German accent, which I will not attempt out of respect for Mike and Scott, who is here, and his German. I may have to throw some in. So he starts telling me about his life in Germany and why he moved here. He said that his father was a high-ranking SS officer during World War II, and after the war, he and his mother fled to France and eventually spent some years in the United States on a fake passport. And when he was looking to retire back in Germany, he was told by someone that he had some kind of Social Security money here in the United States because of the time that he had spent here, and that he should come back here. Oh, and by the way, he was a Hitler Youth and had himself watched Jews being shot. All of a sudden, I didn't really want to ask Edward any more questions about his life. And something was not really computing and not really making any sense. And instead of following my journalistic instinct to probably ask more questions, I kind of was like, okay, let's just go get these boxes and come right back. So We completed the errand, we came back, and I was like, God, I really hope I never have to see this guy again. That was really scary. He was a Nazi, what the hell? So then Edward starts showing up every day to lunchtime ministries to get his coffee, get a meal, except he always has special requests, and he always seeks me out because now I've spent time with him in a few hours on a bus into New York City and back. And he always wanted, for example, mashed potatoes. He used to come up to the window and say, instead of wanting like the really delicious, pasta with meat sauce that was really popular with the other guests, he would always come to the window and say, oh, could I have some mashed potatoes with some salt and some pepper? And that would just be so delicious. And I was just like, eventually I had to say to this guy, you know what? No, like, I'm sorry, we really can't. There's just so many people. We just can't accommodate individual requests. And he would get really irate and say to me, but I'm not like these other people. And I remember that was kind of a really interesting moment because I thought to myself, my God, like, yes, you are, but in so many ways you aren't. Like, we don't really, I've gotten to know a lot of these other people that were coming. A lot of them were men. A lot of them had spent time in and out of the criminal justice system. Many of them, unfortunately, were living either in the shelters or in the parks. I always knew that if I was walking through the park in Hoboken at night, and if I ever got mugged, there would be like 5 guys who knew me by name who would come to my rescue because I knew them all, and I knew their backstories. Oh God, I knew that was gonna happen. So, flash forward, as Edward keeps coming to the soup kitchen, he starts to get more tattered. I realize he's probably also spending some time on the streets himself. At one point, he spent some time in the local hospital. He had gotten really sick, and then the hospital lost his dentures. So he showed back up having no teeth, was really unable to eat. So suddenly, I felt moved to maybe make some of those special requests and give him the mashed potatoes that he was asking me for. But then I would think to myself, he's saying he's not like these other people, and I think, yeah, these are people from all kinds of really mixed backgrounds. They've done, a lot of bad things in their lives, but they've also been really wonderful people as we've come to know them here at Lunchtime Ministries, and at least they're not Nazis. Eventually, Edward stopped showing up to the soup kitchen, and years would go by, and my husband, who also my now husband, who would also volunteer there with me from time to time, and I would sort of wonder, whatever happened to Edward? And a couple years ago, I was at my desk at WHYY, and something reminded me of Edward, and I decided to Google his name. He had given me his last name for various reasons that I won't go into because that thing has squeaked. So I decided to Google him, and I always wondered, was he really a Hitler Youth? Could that really have been possible? What was really his story? What brought him to us? And I Googled his name, and that was the moment that I found out that it was not likely that Edward actually had been a Hitler Youth, or that his father may or may not have been a high-ranking SS officer. I found court documents that he had murdered his 3-year-old daughter, and in a pretty gruesome way. And when I read through these court documents about what happened, I was really shaken up and didn't really quite know what to do with that. So this is the part of the story where I was hoping that I would figure out the moral, and I think the only thing that's really coming to me is the mission of Lunchtime Ministries, which was that all are welcome, no matter what your background is, no matter what you've done in your life. At some point, someone is going to come to you for help, and you might just be the person who has to take the bus ride with that person not knowing, and you do that on faith. Thank you.